Welcome to the Rise and Ride Show, the podcast with me, Katy Jacks from Align and Advance, equine Reiki practitioner and rider confidence coach. This is your space for honest conversations around rider confidence, mindset, horses, healing and personal growth, helping you feel calmer and more connected, more confident, both in and out of the saddle. If you enjoy this podcast, I'd be so grateful if you could subscribe and leave a review, because it genuinely helps more lovely, heart-led equestrians find our community and feel supported on their journey too. Thank you for being here. Now let's get into today's episode. Hello and welcome to the Rise and Ride Show. Today I am joined by the lovely Alison Kenward, who has given up her time to come and chat to us about her horsey journey and everything that she does for her job. I came across Alison online, and I'm going to read directly because I won't do it justice otherwise, from your Facebook bio, because I read this and I thought, I like her. Dressage rider and equestrian coach, sharing ideas, resources and experiences to help riders build confidence, connection and enjoyment with their horse. And I just think that's everything, isn't it? Like confidence, the connection and the enjoyment. That's why we all do it, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for looking and remembering it. For me, I've been riding and coaching a long time. Right. Riding before I coached, obviously. Yes. And I think that if we look at confidence, It comes and goes, and it very much depends on where we are, what's happening. The horse there's so many factors go into how we're feeling, and there can be other emotions and other things bubbling up around that. I think when I talk about connection, there's a little bit of play on words for me, because if we take it at its most intuitive, emotional to me, it's feeling like somehow this horse knows me, I know them, I feel okay to be in their presence, and I feel like they're okay to be in my presence, and that might all be the only thing we know about each other in the beginning. And I wouldn't expect to be able to articulate that. It's a feeling. It's the same way you can look at a horse standing over the stable door and you can fall instantly and completely in love. You just can tell. And I think that the other side for me about connection is how I would go about making that a deeper connection. It sounds so cliched, but about getting to know more about the horse, letting them know me, finding our way through whatever we're doing together. And that can be true in coaching as well as riding and handling or hanging over the gate watching a horse. So that connection can take many different forms. And then as a rider, what connection means to me is, yes, it's got this lovely technical meaning in dressage. Yeah. And it can be easy, not enough connection shown, we'll get higher marks when now develop the connection, all those kind of things that you read on your sheet and you think, oh, how am I going to do that? And so I suppose for me, connection has a dressage feeling. I know what a good connection feels like. I know what that 8 feeling is. I know what the 9 feels like. I'm not lucky enough to know what the 10, maybe little fleeting moments of what that 10 feels like. We can all only dream, can't we? And we can think, why did I not take that feeling into the arena? Because I want to know if the judge agrees with me. Is that a 10? Yeah. And that's where I think we have to, I'm going to say, think about our personal journey with our horse, because the horse does not care whether the judge wrote a mark down. The horse cares about how we felt in that moment. They don't get home to the stable and say, well, damn it, I messed up in movement 6 and my rider was disappointed. They've moved on. Yes. They think, what time do you call this? Is where is my dinner? Come on, and have you not gone yet? And what are you faffing for? And come on. So there's that I suppose that's my view of how horses see the world and how we share the world with them in a very condensed sort of form. But connection for me also is very much a feeling. And I would say I know how to create that feeling. I know how to recreate that feeling. I know how to coach that feeling. I know how to experience that feeling. And I suppose that's what I want to share. I want to share that with horses. I want to share that with riders. I want to share that with anybody who's dumb enough to say to me, who knows nothing about horses, what does it feel like when you ride a horse? Well, buckle up, because you're now going to get a magical mystery tour that's going to take quite a long time. You're going to regret ever asking me that question. So that feeling is now bubbling as I'm talking about it. I'm reconnecting with what that feels like internally, what that feels like somewhere around. I would call it my center, but I suppose it's just slightly up and back from where your tummy button is. It's that feeling of warmth across your shoulders, that little bit of excitement that we learn to damp down a bit if we're riding a horse that's quite hot and does not need us to be this happy. But so that's what I mean by connection. I suppose backtracking, I said about confidence. If I'm thinking about how do I know if I'm feeling confident, this is a really nuanced question, because if we think about this feeling, I'd say this is confidence. This is me smiling. This is that feeling of, ready, let's go. And what you're witnessing now is how I gear myself up to ride, and probably how I gear myself up to coach. So there's a very logical set of steps for me that I go through, and sometimes I go through on autopilot.
Yes.
I think what I've learned to recognize is those moments where there are very real emotions of fear and anxiety and distress and frustration, and all those things are very human. What do I do with those feelings, and how do I get a sticky patch that say I am going to be confident, my horse needs me to be confident? And I try and think of it as what your horse needs you to be is honest and open. So honest, not pretending I'm confident, when inside your stomach has dropped and everything feels appalling and you're shaking and you just don't know, you're frozen. And I'll come back to a story I've got to tell you about a bit later.
Okay.
But you need to be open. What I mean by that is your horse is also coming with their day. How are they feeling right now in this moment? What are they picking up from you as the rider? And what sense are they making of that? So if you're saying to the horse, I'm confident, I'm ready, let's go, but inside your energy is saying, I'm hanging on by a thread here and I hope my horse doesn't, I was going to say kill me, but that's a bit of a euphemism. I hope my horse doesn't make me feel worse. I'm desperate to ride. I want to do all of these things. I'm doubting myself. But there is a point to this. I think the horse is going to be thinking, wait, is there a squirrel hiding behind the K marker? Is there a pigeon that's going to kill me? What? My rider's on high alert. Let me join them in that space.
They know,
Whereas,
don't they?
They absolutely do. If you come in and you say to your horse, you know what, I am not feeling terrific, I'm really pleased to be here, and you stroke them and you just, you give yourself a minute, you breathe. I often find that my tension, if I exhale, the horse will exhale, particularly if they know me. And, generally, they also know that this is a sort of a good time to be saying to me, have you got anything in your pocket? Because let's discuss whether we're going to go through this or not. Let's talk about my needs and my desire for this treat. And you're feeling quite vulnerable. So I'm onto a winner here. And that generally makes me laugh. And the minute you laugh, it kicks you back into this cycle of, okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
And that said, I do have a very clear way to keep queuing myself up. I don't know if you can feel, but when I was describing that sense of anxiousness, my shoulders felt tight. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, no, come back to where you want to be. And so I suppose it would be helpful to sort of say, I feel personally like I've had thousands of day ones. And to give you some context, maybe it's day one with a new horse. Maybe it's day one after the horse has been injured. Maybe it's day one after I've been injured. Maybe it's day one in a new yard, a new country, a new competition venue. All of these are experiences that I've had through my riding career, and my, you know, my coaching career is kind of woven alongside that. So I found myself in many what I would describe as uncertain situations where I have felt fearful. So where I feel anxious, uncertain, fearful, I try not to suppress it, but to check in with myself and say, well, okay, I'm going to go through my process, and I should probably explain what that is, but I'm going to go through my process. And if at any point I'm thinking, actually, I need to trust myself here and pause, I try not to judge myself for that pause.
No.
Because I try to say to myself, do I need extra help? What is it that I or my horse needs that would, it's not really a risk assessment, it's a check-in. So if we backtrack to what I actually do is first up, well, obviously I'm going to get dressed, aren't I? I'm gonna put my riding clothes on, and I'm not superstitious, but I have this thing, and I don't know what it is, but if I put on a pair of breeches, if they're comfortable when I put them over my ankles, I feel like they're going to be comfortable to wear. So I don't know what this is. And I only these days keep breeches that are comfortable to wear, because I think life is too short. Why are you wearing the uncomfortable pair? let's not have, oh damn, it's a bad breeches day. Let's stick with the with the comfort. So that is a sort of subconscious thing, and I'm already thinking, you know, what am I going to ride today? Who am I going to? I shouldn't say what. I felt bad about that immediately. I checked in with myself. Who am I riding today? What am I going to be doing? And sometimes I might not know. Is it raining? Am I going hacking anyway? Have I got my waterproof? All of those kind of questions. I'm still getting dressed, and I'm still sort of taking myself, I suppose, quite intentionally, is perhaps a good word, from where I was before I started to get ready to where I want to be to go there and do that. Then I have, because of my injuries, I have to do an activation routine. So that it's probably a cross between yoga and Pilates. It's all physio designed specifically to help me with the parts of my body that have decided that they don't talk to my brain anymore. So, you know, we kind of we bypass to switch things on. And that sounds odd. So I'll clarify. It's my left leg. I have neurological damage. And so what I need to do is I need to make sure that the leg is not sleeping. You know, I need to wake it up would be a good way. But also I have to do some breathing exercises. That's quite pleasurable in itself. I'm very, very bad at them. I've been trying to learn this technique for 30 years, and the physio laughs at me regularly because I still have never quite got the full lung capacity that we're aiming for. I only actually, as a side note, achieved that in sitting trot. It is somehow when it's in the moment of being on a horse, I find it easier to breathe. But you know, exercising wise, I'm thinking, you know, I'm trying, I think I'm doing it, but it takes a horse to complete that process, which is kind of nice.
That is kind of special.
Yeah. So then, you know, by this time I'm now thinking about getting my horse ready, and I talk to horses, and I chat away to them, and it's just part of who I am. And I you know, I know the science behind it and what that's doing, but really for me it's the start of a conversation. And sometimes it is in my head, but where I'm at in an environment where no one's going to care if I talk to my horse or not, then I suppose in times I would have been self-conscious, and in the past on certain yards it would have been frowned upon, simply because I was in quite a sporty environment
Right.
at different times. I'm thinking overseas here. This is no reflection on anywhere in the UK. This is just where they thought that anybody was English was soft, and they didn't really get our need to feel connection.
No.
Let's just say, and that sounds a huge generalization, but that was just my experience in a certain chapter. And so I chat away to horses, and I suppose it's the beginning of being in the space, finding out where they are, having a bit of a giggle with them. Maybe you're eating your hay, but I would really like to borrow you for this 30 minutes to go in the school, and can we start this negotiation, because that's what we're doing. And now I suppose I'm talking about horses that I know quite well. It's obviously very different if you're going to ride a horse that you've not met before. But still, I wouldn't feel so comfortable walking into an indoor and going straight to the mounting block and getting on. That's even in that scenario, even in exams, assessments, competitions, you'll generally find me checking in some way. Some of the habits that I've got are from when I was backing youngsters and riding youngsters and feeling quite fearful of, is today the day that, we don't quite achieve what we were after. I tend to touch down the girth area and see if I get a reaction. I tend to just run my hand over their quarters, little scratches on the withers, anything that sort of, and I suppose I would just do it. I would find it very difficult not to do that. That's part of the communication for me. And certainly that's become more important as I've had my injuries to think about. But I think it's always had this sense of, I suppose it's just part of who I am with the horse in that moment. And I think that it's not going to be for everybody, but I do see that everybody has different ways of doing this. And if you watch people with horses, they might not do it exactly the same way that we do, but they all have their own way. And I think that's what's so magical about a relationship with a horse, is it's so personal, it's so unique, it deserves to be protected and nurtured and enjoyed. And that's part, I suppose, of confidence, in that you give yourself understanding, you give yourself the grace to have a day where you're not feeling how you want to feel. And that's the one, horses aren't judging you. I think that's what makes them so special. So I think that's a sort of whistle-top tour of how I get from how am I feeling? Let's check in with the horse. Let's get on the horse. Before I tell you about some of my coping strategies, I'd love to backtrack a bit and tell you about some of the moments where my way of doing things, I suppose, clicked into space. So some people might not know that I played Polocrosse. And it's something that happened for me. I loved show jumping at Pony Club. I loved mounted games. My pony preferred mounted games. He was very, very good at jumping, but he just loved the games. And they love what they love, don't they? And when when we tried Polocrosse the first time, there was an instant success for me, because I had there used to be this game called Litter Race, and you'd have a bean pole and you'd be picking up a fairy liquid bottle by pushing the bean pole into the fairy liquid bottle, picking it up, carrying this rattling thing and put it in a bucket. And the first time they ever ever played that game. Utter carnage, pony spooking. My pony said, you have to be joking. And the way that my mind worked, I think I might have been about 12, 13, somewhere around there. I said to my mum, and I need a bean pole and I need a fairy liquid bottle. And she's like, oh, fine, here you are. What are you going to do with it?
Cheapest part of horsey equipment you've ever asked me, so go for it.
Yeah, knock yourself out. And through trial and error, first of all, I thought, right, I'm going to rattle it on the ground. What's that? So I thought, no, okay, I'm going to be quieter about this, and I'm going to build it up incrementally. And I can't remember how long this took, but it was the school holidays. So maybe it was this project that kept me entertained. And the pony got to the point of going, you can do whatever you like, because at this point, I no longer care. Yeah, they're quite stoic, aren't they, Pony Club ponies? They're like, oh, I thought I'd seen it all, and then I got this child. So by the time we got to Polocrosse, which in effect the coach said, right, you're going to take your racket, you're going to lean down and you're going to scoop the ball off the ground. My pony and I were like, got this. And we got very quickly onto a team. And I got very quickly very competitive about being in this team environment, and went on, progressed. And I suppose I was to be about, I would say 16, 17-ish. I can't really remember. But one particular coach said, look, you're riding fine. You're riding well. You and your horse are doing great. But what's letting you down, what's stopping you get where you want to be competitively, is that you're not practicing enough with your racket and your ball. And so I'm going to give you an exercise to do.
Yeah.
I want you to pick a spot on the brick wall, and we're going to pick that brick because it's smooth. And I want you to spend an hour a day throwing the ball to that brick and catch it, because you are never going to know where. And I don't think that coach knew me particularly well, did not know what that would mean to somebody who had spent an entire summer with a stick. So every day for an hour, the neighbours were absolutely thrilled, as you might imagine. And it got me running around, and it came back, you've been practicing, haven't you? I said, yeah. And he said, now you've got to get closer to the wall. What? And it's going to smack me in the face. Well, you'll catch it quicker. This is awful. This is awful. So fast forward to I'm now about, I suppose about 20, 21, that sort of age. Again, timelines at this point in my life, I'm a bit like, when was this?
Yeah.
But I was playing in a ladies' team in New Zealand. And it was what my memory of it was that it was very, very hot. I had never been so hot in my life. Even the people who were used to being in New Zealand were saying this is a hot day. Right. And the last thing that I wanted to do was to play a match. That may well have been the beginning of the end of my Polocrosse career. Who knows? However, in a way, it wasn't. I went on to play for some more seasons, but I can remember thinking to myself, well, I'm sitting on my horse, everything that I disliked in that moment, and I thought, just stop. You've got one job to do. You get a hold of yourself, and I because my horse had suddenly tensed, and I thought, like, you got to relax, you got to stop, you got to get yourself here with this horse. Maybe not I'm articulating it from memory, so I think in real time it would have been a lot less considered. It would have just been me making that switch from I'm hot, I'm uncomfortable, I'm annoyed, I'm angry, oh wait, I'm on a horse. I'm on a horse, this is good. There's my horse, there's my relax. One of the things that happens in Polocrosse is that you line up opposite your equivalent number, so the ones at the front, the twos in the middle, the threes at the back. And in this match I was playing two, so a centre, which made me even crosser because I actually prefer playing three. So we're not in a good emotional space here. We're feeling quite aggro. And my job in the middle was to catch the ball that gets thrown down the middle. And I remember thinking, right, all I've got to do is watch the ball and follow it. Watch the ball and follow it, which is essentially all a number 2 does. If we're being really basic, I suppose is the word about it. Your job is ball. You spend the next 6 minutes of your life where the ball is, you are. That's a coaching thing. Do nothing else. So I put my racket up and I had mentally tuned out my opponent. I tuned out the people at the front. I tuned out the people at the back. I watched the ball and I caught it. And I remember the feeling of the speed of it because I caught quite a fast ball and the utter shock. And I was just about to spin thinking I don't have to go find the ball because now I've got it. Yeah. Now my job is safe handing over to my number 1, or depending on how they're doing, maybe my number 3, because tactically we've got to make a plan. And my teammates didn't expect me to catch the ball any more than I did. Meanwhile, the whistle goes because the other side has infringed our team. And everybody on my team is like, why did you blow the whistle when we've got the ball? But technically it was a dangerous sort of I'm actually not sure why it went to this day, but I have a feeling it was something like they probably swung their racket in a way that would have put the other, not intentionally, I'm sure, but things happen and they keep you safe. And that's basically the umpire's job, isn't it? To look after everybody. But the reason the whistle blew was irrelevant to me and my teammates. We're now thinking, terrific. So we go into the line out again, and I don't know if you can imagine by now how fuming I am, and my horse is beginning to be pretty, like, how much longer is there? And someone from the sideline says, Alison, said my name and took me out of my internal sort of catch the ball again. And I remember thinking, stupid thing to say. What do you mean catch the ball again? And I remember, get myself into place, rack it up with no certainty or no expectation or anything in my head except ball. And I got it again. And this time we actually took it. And I do remember us winning that game and doing pretty well in the tournament after that. But there's 2 things that why I wanted to share this story. One is I then had a pretty repeatable way of what I needed to be reliable in that moment. But I also realised that what had got me to that moment under extreme pressure, irritation, everything that you would say you don't really want, was practice. I'd been preparing for that for longer than I even had. I'd never really joined the dots. Yeah. And I hadn't ever really stepped back and thought about that. And I did keep a journal and I did write down how I was feeling, and I didn't let anybody see it because quite often I was feeling quite hot, cross, and, and getting it out on paper would tell me the bits that were good, and what made the difference. Because I always said to myself, I've got to get better. How am I going to get better? What's going to make the difference? And I did have some good coaches. I was really lucky, sort of steered me in the direction of, well, what is it that you like? And I'll come back to that Polocrosse story in a minute, but we've got to go to South Africa now because I was on a tour. Yeah. And I must have been under 21 because it was an under 21 tour. And, the wonderful hosts really looked after us, took us on all sorts of activities, treated us to so many experiences. And one of the things they did was they took us to the beach to ride.
Oh, amazing.
But because we were a big squad, we must have had I'm guessing we must have had 12 of us, maybe 9. Can't remember. Again, 12 would make sense mathematically, but who knows?
Yeah.
Really, I do remember we filled a bus and whatever. And my brain is saying 9, and I'm thinking 12 is more logical. But so let's stick with 9. They didn't have enough horses for all of them and all of us. But what they did have was some family horses. So they said, well, actually, we have this dressage horse. We want the rider in the group, and we want someone who's going to be quite chilled and make friends, because this horse needs someone to hold his hand.
Right.
And everybody looked at me, and I thought, dressage horse, what am I going to do with a dressage horse? Long story short, I sat on this horse, and I had the absolute, if I could have brought him home, I just felt absolutely in love. And in that moment, as he's doing these changes through the sands in this magical sort of money can't buy experience, I'm thinking, why am I playing Polocrosse when this is possible? And I can remember the self-talk that you have. You start to have this belief, but I'm a Polocrosse player and I mustn't get interested in dressage. There's nothing about me that's trained. None of my horses are flat horses. I'm not known for being very good in my BHS exams, because I'm not great with the contact, because I spend my life in Polocrosse with zero contact, riding like a Western rider with my seat, my breathing. I don't really understand at this point in my career what contact should feel like. Maybe it's just one of those dreams. Maybe dressage is for other people. Anyway, I came back to the UK because I wanted to get my AI. I thought, if I can get my AI, what we're calling it now, stage 3 coaching, complete horsemanship. There you go.
Yeah.
If I can achieve that, then I have a qualification. I've got a rung on the ladder. I feel professionally like I've made the step from being a prelim teach to. So, but the stumbling block for me is I've got to ride on the flat and achieve the level.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I'm going to go to a riding centre, BHS centre, and I'm going to immerse myself in this, because I need to understand what that feels like on a horse who is used to being ridden. And I had the most wonderful set of coaches who said to me, every time you get it, you give it away. What is that about? And I said, I thought that's what we were doing, was we were trying to get softness, so we were giving it away. And they were saying, well, actually, you need to think about receiving it and nurturing it and lightening and putting your leg on to send the horse forward to talk to you through it. So I went through this process, and I got it for more than a second, and I got it around a short side, and I lost it. And that sinking feeling of I can't do this, I don't understand, how is this put? And they said to me, you are going to experience this so many times, because what's happening is that the horse's balance is changing. You haven't yet discovered the feeling of using your leg, using your seat, using the timing of your aids, having that conversation through the. I mean, we're talking a period of by now probably about 3 weeks in of lessons 3 times a week, because I wanted to pass this exam. I didn't have long before I had to go back to New Zealand. I didn't want to go without passing my exam. You get these goals, don't you? And at this point in my life, I was very like this has to be done, and the pressure was coming from me. It wasn't. Nobody was saying pass this or else. Just wanted it so badly. And then I remember them saying, okay, when you jump, you have a contact. And I said, beg your pardon. And they said, when you're riding a jump horse and you're not thinking about anything other than rhythm and balance and forward to a fence and helping the horse, that's where your skill is. You're going to pass that bit. It's on the flat. why can you not ride your flat horses like your jump horses? And I said, because I'm not good at dressage. And they said, can you just forget this? I'm not good at dressage. Imagine, and I would say this now, creeps into my coaching a lot with people who are starting to doubt whether they can ride on the flat, is let's look at what you do enjoy and let's imagine you're doing that. Let's bring the feeling, the confidence, that energy, that openness into the situation, because it's just being that little bit creative and finding your way to the feeling. For me, that's what makes the difference. And it unlocked so much for me. And I stopped thinking I can never be a dressage rider. And I thought, if I wanted to compete in dressage, what would I need to do? And so when I went back to New Zealand, and it was off season, and my job was a lot to do with whatever young horses we had, and we had horses off the track, we had horses that didn't want to race. They'd been tried and they said, no, I don't want to run up and down. We had all sorts, just wonderful, mostly thoroughbreds, but also quarter horses. A wonderful horse that was half Clydesdale.
Wow.
He was super, very fond of him, but was producing those horses to be better balanced. And when no one was looking, I started to be a bit English about it and see if I could recreate this stage 3 feeling. And learn a little bit about how do you switch a polo pony from I'm going in this way to maybe I could go in this way. And I played and I did all sorts of things. And then a horse that I had my best ever moment with, best ever schooling moment in that place was in the UK we'd say it was a grade B show jumper, and it had come for a little bit of tuning up. And suddenly I was thinking, oh, this horse knows some of the things that were in the stage 3 and the stage 4. And what would happen if I did counter canter? And what would happen if I did this? And what would happen if I did that? And this horse just went, yeah, okay. And then I thought, when I come home, I am finding a horse like this. And actually, I did. I was very lucky. Came home, not big budget, found a lovely horse who I called William, and that wasn't his name. He had been a successful event horse. I bought him from the field from someone else. He'd been on quite an interesting journey, which I won't bore you with, but he was a nice horse. He was very friendly. He was open to me. When I touched his girth, he didn't flinch, or I scratched his. I was thinking, actually, putting the tack on you and getting on you at home with nobody there, I think would be all right.
Yeah.
And I'm not ever saying that I advocate that as a good idea, but when you have that feeling, you think there's potential here. And I still went through can someone else sit on him first, because I'm, and they did. And I got him home and we had a wonderful day. I lost him. He got a cut and he had a steroid injection and he got laminitis. And he had very poor feet anyway. So it was a perfect storm between, you need to treat this wound, and we need to do what we need to do. But actually the fallout from that meant that he just couldn't be made comfortable. And so I didn't know him very long, but he was the horse. And I mention him because I did my first unaffiliated dressage on him. And it was my first time towing the trailer, because my friend said, do you want to go to dressage? And I said, I'd love to go to dressage. And she said, oh, okay. And then we got to go time and she said, I don't think I can tow. I'm too nervous. And I said, but I haven't towed for ages, and certainly not in the UK. I've towed around the farm where there's nothing coming.
No.
And now you want me to tow to a competition when I'm feeling quite nervous. How does this work? And anyway, and so by the time we got to the competition, I looked at William and I said, I no longer care if we win or not. I just need to relax. Let's go and have a nice time. And I had the most wonderful time with him. And I'm so pleased because although I had hopes of the competition pathway, I knew it wasn't to be. You get things happen. And I suppose at another time was a friend had said to me, there's a horse coming up for loan. I know this horse. You have to have it. I've got William. No, trust me. Jack is going to change your life. And when we went to see him, I thought, how is Jack going to change my life? He looked quite light in his condition. He was quite a feral sort of wind-sucking horse. And I thought, how is this what I need? Anyway, I went and said hello to him, and he gave me that same lovely greeting that William did every day. They were actually great friends. When I got Jack home, Jack and William loved each other.
Oh.
So I'm so glad that I had that. And it was a lovely dynamic. In fact, everybody loved William. And so I got on Jack. I hated the saddle that he had on. It was a Steuben. It was very hard. It was a forward cut jump saddle.
Right.
And by now I'm thinking dressage rider. And I knew that Jack was an event horse. He'd been around Blenheim. He was an advanced event horse. And I knew that he was, shall we say, quite opinionated.
Right.
But I just thought, I'm not invested in you yet. I like you. I want to try you. I want to see what you're going to do. And I got quite grumpy with the stirrups because I was feeling that it was parting us from that connection. I didn't want to ride round in jump seat. I didn't want to do it. I don't want to wake him up. If he's sharp and he's this advanced horse, I actually want to bring him down to where I want to be. So I did what I would do in New Zealand. I just got rid of the stirrups. I used to ride bareback so often that taking the stirrups away, it never felt torturous to me. It always felt closer to the horse.
That's amazing.
And stuff me, if he didn't spook at a pigeon quite sharply, and I was so incensed that he had been rude that I kicked him with my left leg and said, go forward. And he went, okay. And he never argued with me in that way again. And the rider thought he was going to dump his owner thought he was going to put me on the floor because she'd seen what he was. Had I known what he was capable of, I would have kept my stirrups. But in that moment, I had absolutely no inkling of how inside out he could turn himself. And he was a horse that I competed at nationals. I hacked up the main road. I once hacked him up on a windy day, and a pub umbrella lifted off and rolled down the road towards us. And he said, I am just thinking about getting out of here. Yeah. And I did what I always did. I tapped my pockets and I said, Mummy's got minties. And he said, oh, mints. And whenever I thought that he might possibly be about to put me on the floor, I just offered him a mint. And I didn't care. I didn't care how many people said to me, this is appalling, it's wrong, it's not equitation. How could you be? I was like, I just want to live.
No, I'm still on the horse.
If it takes me a packet of mints. And as our relationship evolved, I would say to him, now, when you get home, you can have every mint that I've got, but right now you've eaten them all, so please don't kill me. And he'd sort of go, oh, all right then. And we had that kind of relationship. He was just a lovely, he was the horse that taught me what a 20-meter circle should feel like. Oh, so amazing. I went and I did my first dressage test, and I thought, I'm going to ride to my tangent points, because at this point I'm still not believing that I'm a dressage rider. I still remembering the stereotype of what you should be to be a dressage rider, and I'm thinking I'm never going to be that. I'm thinking everybody's going to look at me. There's a very wonderful quote, and I remember reading it in Horse and Hound from Anna Ross, saying aerodynamically the bumblebee can't fly, but nobody's told the bumblebee, so away it goes.
Love that.
And I've held that my entire career in one shape or another, which is that when I felt that perhaps I shouldn't or I might not, I've gone into my internal space and thought, why? And then carried on and learned to sort of try and tune it out. I mean, it can still feel uncomfortable when people are perhaps less kind than they might be, but I've actually found that they're less kind if you are perhaps feeling a bit vulnerable. And it isn't ever intentional. I don't think people set out to be unkind. I think if you look at a competition warm-up scenario, you might perceive someone to be unkind, but actually most of the time they're so inwardly focused that they don't have time to be kind.
No, and I think that is like a really big moment for people, that competition warm-up scenario, because it can really, you're just getting ready for your competition, so you're in quite a vulnerable state as it is. And everybody that goes into that warm-up thinks everyone else's horses are going in a much better way than their own, and it can be quite tough on people, I think. And but I have experienced the fact that if once we've all come back to walk, or things are calming down, and things sort of start to calm down before you go in, and the person that I've felt the most intimidated by, I usually try and speak to them, because once I've spoken to them, I realise they're feeling exactly the same as I am, and they are just really trying to get through it as well. And once you speak to them, you're like, yeah, we're all in the same boat here. It's fine.
Exactly. And I can tell you, some wonderful stories. I mean, one of them, I was on a particularly hot, spooky horse, one of those horses who was actually fundamentally lazy and chose to be overreactive as a way to divert from actually going forwards. And you had to persuade him to have that connection and to let go of any tension in order to go forwards. But on one particular time, I was warming up. I think it was called the Summer Festival. So it was this kind of like a pre-regionals warm-up, and it was a big deal, and there were a lot of professional riders there. And I found myself in counter canter trying to stay alive, because counter canter has always been my secret weapon with this particular horse, because he found it very difficult to turn himself inside out and put me on the ground if he was actually focusing on his balance. And once he would let go of his tension, we would go into true canter, and I would have the most glorious canter, and I would tell him how wonderful he is, and he would feel wonderful, and I would feel wonderful. And it was a moment of tactics, I suppose. Very thankful for the person who taught me that, by the way. But on this one particular occasion, I think it was probably raining. It usually is, isn't it? You either really boiling hot or getting soaking wet. You're always questioning your life choices in that minute. Like, why 100%. Did I decide to compete today? And I'm coming around the corner in counter canter, and I suddenly look up and see an Olympian coming towards me. And I looked at her, and she was looking amazing, right? And I thought, oh God, I'm going to cut her off, and I should give way, but I would have to do a flying change, and this horse will make matters much worse if I ask for a change, because he's not let me in. And I looked up at her. I said, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to stay alive. And she smiled and she said, it's okay. You're doing a good job. And I can remember in that moment. And then as I was just, that absolutely made my day. And then as I came round later in the better canter, she said, see, all you had to do was believe. And I said, I'm so sorry for earlier. I said, I felt I should get out your way. She said, it happens to all of us. And when you just want to hug someone. What a lovely human. What a lovely human. And I mean, my very first regionals, I can remember being shocked, because it was Addington, and on a normal show day at Addington, all the lorries park that way. Right. A competition like at regionals, where they are having to fill the car park differently and manage hookups, and they would park them that way. So
Right.
we come round expecting to find a place like normal, to be confronted with the sea of horse boxes. And we park, and then behind me, and I'm going to name drop because I don't think he would mind, Peter Storr parks behind me, and I thought, oh my goodness, seriously, I am not worthy to be in this space. What am I doing? And I froze at the top of the ramp, like rabbits in the headline. What if he thinks my horse is rubbish? What if he thinks I'm rubbish? What if he wonders why I'm here getting in his way? And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, hello. And I said, hello. And he said, bit nervous. They were very nervous. And he went, it's okay. You're going to be fine. And I can remember in that moment thinking, okay, if that, and it makes me quite emotional talking about that, but if that's simple, and I try to be nice and smile, even if it's the sort of, I'm hanging on, I'll give a little smile. I mean, I've found myself in so many warm-ups in that situation, and at the end of the day, we are all in a challenging, high-pressure environment. And it's not that different to the polo. There is a point to this. It's not that different to the Polocrosse. Can I catch the ball? It's, can I bring what I do at home to get my horse relaxed, confident, connected, ready to go and enjoy presenting this test within the confines of the warm-up, and getting from the warm-up to the test and keeping our poise and everything. And that's one of the most fun parts of dressage to me, because without fail, there's usually this 2 or 3 minutes at the beginning of my warm-up where I suddenly find myself sitting on the saddle thinking, I can't ride today. Why can't I ride today? Why can I not feel where my legs I mean, it's worse now, I can't feel my leg. Or else maybe it's better. Where are my legs? Where's the, my horse? And it's usually because I'm tense and my horse is tense, and we're both trying to figure out each other. And one day at Addington, you can tell where I live now, not at Addington, but very close. We were, they built this brand new arena, and it was their international jumping arena. And for whatever reason, they decided that's where we were warming up. And all of my sort of pre-ride visualization, if you like, I didn't know what it was in those days because I didn't have the language, but all my imaginings.
That's so funny, because I didn't know that I visualized my competitions and my rides until I started this work. And I thought, I've done this since I was a child. Absolutely. I think when I was a child, I probably framed it as wishing, because I was just the night before a competition. I was in bed going, I'm going to win this tomorrow. I'm going to go in and I'm going to, and I'd go through the whole competition. But I kind of, it's given a different term now. But wishing.
and well, I like wishing. So, the wish I'd had, the thinking about it was the fair trees will be there, the sand will be black. I'll do the same pattern I always do. This was Jack, by the way.
Right.
So this is my. And we went into the international arena, and he went, "Oh, am I at a big competition? Do I need to be an event horse? Where are the jumps?" I went, "Absolutely not." Immediately thought, I'm bouncing, I'm tense, he's tense, and thought, okay, I'm going to do what I do at home. I'm going to position his shoulders. I'm going to find him. I'm going to have the conversation. And while I was doing that, in my brain, I went, oh, I can ride. And so now, since then, because I found a way to recreate it, I get on, I breathe, I don't panic about the fact that the saddle feels like an alien place. I recognize that I'm tense. I recognize my horse is tense. We go forward in the walk, probably from the car park to the warm-up arena, navigating. I've just done that in speed. Fast forward from Addington to the arena. And then we position the shoulders. And then depending on what I've got, depends on what tactic. So I have about, my mum will tell you I have about 3 or 4, because she's watched a lot of warm-ups, 3 or 4 adaptable routines that will come out seemingly out of nowhere, but my horse recognizes them. And I kind of feel like my horse is saying, I need this. And they don't say that, but that's what it feels like to me. I'm thinking, oh God, we need to we need to find a way to channel the energy, find that ease. And quite often flow. Absolutely. I love flow.
You can feel so blocked when you first get on and you're nervous, can't you? And your horse can feel that as well, and everything feels very rigid. And I always find that I feel like the 3 layers: the horse, the saddle, and me. And I feel like I'm perched. I'm not sitting down. And I try to kind of imagine that all kind of melting into one, and equally push my energy in front of the horse. So I'm like, we need to go there. So let's flow to there, please.
And I over the last decade, so several horses on from Jack, I found, I'm going to use that awful internet word of hack. And what I mean by that is I found a couple of things that helped me find that space. So one of them is part of my pre-active routine that I certainly didn't have then the way that I have now. No. And it's how I call it feeling like my core is zipped up. So if I'm standing tall and just breathing, if I don't know if anybody's ever said to you, when you're sitting on a horse and you're working on your position and you're working on being in good balance, if we magic the horse away from you, would you land on your feet? So that's something that we coach our way through. And one day I thought, what would happen if I actually were to land on my feet, and imagine if I had a horse, and, could I do it? Yeah. And I found that I could be on a horse, standing on my feet, in my, both doing it and in my mind. And I could feel that sort of opening of my hips and the lengthening of my legs, and that center that zipped up, that ability to hold myself in balance while still breathing and not fight the movement. And then I realized that was actually linking to my process of readying myself to ride. And so I've shown the physio this, and just to kind of talk about where I need to be to feel ready to ride. And that's been quite important in a patterning sense, because now I'm not getting the feedback to my brain that I've lived with all my life. I've had to find ways to circumnavigate that a little bit, and to find new ways of because you know how the brain can build new pathways, and we can train it. In my case, it's not very reliable. I feel like my brain is a bit of a goldfish. Oh, there you are. Now, where have you gone? There you are. Where have you gone? It's like that, and sometimes on a horse, I'm thinking to myself, I've had to stop worrying about whether it's going to switch off and cross that bridge when it comes to it, because the more I think I've got to hold it, the worse it becomes. So we take out that noise and we just let the movement of the horse. So that would be a little hack along with the talking. But I want to turn that back in time. So pre-Jack, I was doing my stage 4 preparation. Yeah. And the stage 4 to me represented something that I had always thought to be impossible. But when I passed my stage 3, I thought, okay, maybe, what will it take? And I realized that I was subconsciously kind of always working my way towards it. And I went through course. I did what you were supposed to do. I went and had the lessons. I had lunge lessons and developed my skill. I got better at jumping. I got a better understanding. I developed my feel. I rode lots of horses. All the things on paper that I should do. Yeah. I came back from New Zealand and thought, I might not be as tidy as I need to be, in terms of there's been nobody coaching me. Maybe I've got some bad habits. Maybe I need to feel good about the exam. I need to know, should I postpone the exam or should I go for it? And I booked myself for a week at Gleneagles, because at that time, the window they had availability. So I got on a train, went to Gleneagles. The first few days they were saying, okay, then one of the biggest things we've got is we've got to make you look elegant. And that's got to come from you believing that you are elegant. And I said, have you looked at me that I'm not elegant? And they said, no. Every moment that you ride, you need to think, is someone from Horse and Hound coming to take my picture right now? Notice how you feel when you sit up for that horse and hound moment. We're going to spend the week working towards that elegance. We're also going to lunge you to within an inch of your life where you can no longer walk upstairs or downstairs. But we're going to work on your belief in this elegance so that it becomes part of how you ride on the flat. You know, this is, I suppose it's a bit like arena craft, ring craft.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
actually really served me later on when I got William and Jack, because I felt, well, I have my stage 4, and in my mind, I was like, I actually deserve to have these nice horses now because I've achieved this. But we get to the Wednesday and it's cross country day. And I had been doing the show jumping and I hadn't really told them how much internally I was fighting, thinking these fences are too big. I don't know these horses. I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable. And they kept saying to me, think of the canter. I'm thinking of the canter. I'm thinking of the canter. I'm watching the ball. I'm thinking of the canter. All of these tactics, but I was holding, suppressing, and not really dealing. And we get out on the cross-country course, and it was a ridge and furrow field. And I was riding the canter as though it were a flat field. Now, if you ride on a flat field, you can keep your rhythm. But the terrain, the uneven terrain, sucks the energy out. So we got to the fence and the horse stopped. And I thought, oh, God. But so now I've got a self-fulfilling prophecy of, I knew it was going to be bad. It feels bad. I don't, maybe I've made the wrong decision. Everything externally came into that moment. And I remember feeling absolutely mortified and looking at the coach, feeling a broken person in that moment. And they said, breathe, just breathe. Look at me. Look at the terrain. Talk to me about how you rode that. And I said, well, I just sat there hoping. And they said, okay, that what was the outcome? What was predictable? And so they said, like, oh, come like you mean it. And I did, but by now I'm ahead of the movement, thinking brain is getting there before body and horse. And the horse stopped and I fell off. So now I'm sitting on the ground and I looked at them and I went, shall I resign now? Shall I withdraw? Shall I never do this again? And they said, no, you're going to breathe. And they said, let's get the canter. Long story short, they got me thinking about the canter. They got me cantering past the jump. They got me cantering on the different terrain. And then because they were smart, they said, now keep coming. And this time don't turn off. And by now the horse is actually going in a canter pace that makes the jump look easy because it was a lovely horse. It to its mind, it thought, my rider doesn't want to jump, so I will do the nice thing.
Yeah.
So we switched all of that up. And I wouldn't say that I was riding any more positively, but I was riding in the present. I was feeling that. And we talked a lot about, okay, we want you to hold on to that feeling. Yeah. The next day, they gave me a horse who was a Welsh cob and said, we're going cross country. And I can remember thinking, those fences are big and solid, and this Welsh cob is half asleep. And what if I die? And them saying, look, in the exam, you may well get this type of horse or this type of horse. Now, yesterday you rode this type of horse, and we've got to now translate that to this type of horse. And by now I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And they said, what was the biggest lesson you learned yesterday? And I said, well, I was getting the horse in front of the leg, getting the feel into the bridle, everything on the flat, going, okay, go and have a canter. And to my surprise, I put my leg on and this horse went up to the bridle. And I thought, oh, you buggers, you've challenged my assumptions. Yeah. And you've given me a horse that is actually really lovely. And we did so well. They said, well, I don't know what happened, but you should go to sleep more often because from where you were yesterday to where you are today, different rider. Now we're excited for you and your assessment. Are you excited? And I said, oh, yes, I am. And they said, right, now is the time. We're going to go around the course. I'm going to do different things so that when you come to do your exam, you've jumped all the different types of fences.
Yeah.
And they had me jumping things that, honestly, in cold blood, I don't think that I would have done. And then they did it to me the next day. We went into the show jumping arena and they gave me this beautiful A-grade show jumper. However, you weren't allowed to go and tack him up unless you had your stage 3, because he was quite an angry horse who wanted his space.
Right.
And I don't know what his history was, but I can remember being absolutely terrified because they went, Alison, you're a stage 4 candidate. You take the tack, you'll be absolutely fine. He knows you're not going to bother him or fuss him. He will not see you as a threat. You're a nice person. I got my tag. I'm like, yes, right now I'm feeling of returning my stage 3 because I don't want to go in that stable. And then I thought, okay, nobody's looking. It's just me and the horse. And I poked my head round the door and I spoke to him and he put his ears forwards and I went, you are friendly. I wondered if you might be. And I'm talking away and he came over and I said, now, I've been told to put your bridle on, blah, 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 blah. And he said, and I tapped him up. And they said, and I came round and they were laughing their heads off. And they said they think that's the longest conversation anyone's ever had with that horse that hasn't had a swear word. And I said, oh. And they said, we wondered if you would come out or if you would be too nervous or if you would do it or what would actually happen. And I was like, is this some kind of hazing? Is this some kind of... And they were like, no, we just wanted you to go because we wanted you to ride this horse. And we thought if you are presented in the school with a horse that you haven't tacked up and you think about his reputation, you are not going to ride him. You've heard all the grooms talking about him and there's this big story and we actually wanted you to go in there and experience him. I have to say, in terms of show jumping, it is probably right up there with one of the best experiences of my life. I took the canter and we talked about the line and they said there's no point in cantering him over anything too small. He needs to have a decent sized fence. And we started off with me thinking this is stage 4 height and I'm not that happy about it, but okay. And then he gave me the most incredible feel. And I remember it was an oxer on the diagonal, an upright off the corner, and I think probably another oxer on the other side. And there were no ground lines. And it was very much a keep your canter. I don't know why I'm telling you this story. I'm sure it'll come back to me. But keep your canter as you go round and stay in balance. Remember to half halt. Remember to breathe. Sit up. All of the self-talk, the cues. Whether they said this to me or whether this was my internal, I can't remember. Okay, so they probably were not giving me this information, but this is my memory of the feeling merging with what we did. And I can remember coming off the corner and thinking, oh, that's a bit bigger than last time, but thinking, don't think, you're imagining it. And realising that actually they had built, the fences were higher than the arena boards. So there was a big track, and I've never jumped that big in my life with such a small, with such a smile on my face, with such a belief. This was the last day. And so I went to my stage 4, having been through this entire process of emotions. And we got there and I was physically shaking. And they said, you are going to feel like you felt on Wednesday, and you know how you're going to get through it. You're going to get the horse on your aids in front of your leg, and you are going to feel elegant, horse and hound, and canter. Right? So I'm thinking elegant, horse and hound, canter, elegant, horse and hound, canter. It was at Warwickshire College, and we came down the drive and we saw the exam field, and I looked at the fences and thought, they're putting them up. Anyway, I found out that what they'd been telling me all week was stage 4 height was actually not. It was competition height. It was huge, and it was absolutely enormous. And so the actual exam, I got this lovely horse. I put my leg on. It came to the contact. It took me round. I rode at cross-country pace. I was riding forwards. I was grinning so much. It was just,
that's amazing.
And I could have, if I could bottle what I learned in that week, I like to think that I've been able to share little bits of that energy and that positive experience with people that I coached, because it was just such a milestone, such a gift, what a wonderful ability to read your rider and share and improve them, and you're so thankful to those horses who were generous and open, and that sort of encapsulates to me, it's not really against the odds, it's more about preparing and trying to create something that sets you up for that good experience. So it's not about saying, I said at the beginning, didn't I, I'm going to be confident, I'm going to be confident. It's saying, okay, I might not be feeling confident right now, but I know what I need to do to feel more confident.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things, how I see it, is that your day one confidence is very different to your day 100 confidence. So you're going through and through and through and through. And if something happens at day 100 that means you're back to day one, you're not taking day 100 feeling to day one. You're just not. You've got to repeat the process.
Yeah.
So you have to be kind to yourself and say, I'm not going to get hung up in, I could do it last year, what's happened.
Yeah.
You're going to say, this is where I am now.
Yeah.
This is where I want to be. This is how I'm going to get there. These are the people who can probably help me. And maybe there are more steps between here and here than I realise yet.
Yes.
And maybe I don't need to know all of these steps yet. Maybe I need to do well here so that I can get to there. And so that's how I
100%. I totally agree with, like, doing well here and getting that locked in and that feeling like it's just brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
And then moving that small step along.
Yeah.
And I think what we don't give ourselves is time and kindness. And I kind of say to people, talk to yourself like you're speaking to your best friend at the yard. Because if they were having a really rough day riding their horse and their confidence was shot and they were really worried, you wouldn't be saying to them, well, you did it last week. I mean, unless you're an absolutely unhinged, you wouldn't be saying to them, like, you did it last week, for goodness sake, what's wrong with you? Get back on your horse. And but that's how we speak to ourselves sometimes. And I think it's just really important to go, no, hold on, I'm going to speak to myself like I'm my best friend now and be nice and give myself time and grace.
Exactly, 100%. I mean, the most, is it recent? I suppose it would be about 3-4 years ago, I found myself, when I was relearning to walk and ride at the same time, and actually the relearning to ride helped relearn to walk, because my body sort of went, this is pleasant, this is okay, we're moving, we're supported. But my very first ride on this new horse, because my horse had died, and so I had to ride a new horse, and I was thinking, I am not bringing educated rider to me. I'm bringing that I need to be on a lead rein because I do not know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to walk 3 steps and need to get off. I don't know how I'm going to get off. What if I can't get off? What if the horse decides the easiest way for me to get off is to put... And I was riding the most gorgeous horse, okay, and people will have seen him all over my feeds and whatever. My friend, I made her get on and off, so I could see that he wasn't bothered. And then I said, now don't get off like you, get off like me. Get off onto the mountain block and be hesitant and see what happens if you stumble and if you lurch like you're a bit drunk. Meanwhile, my mum is now on her second pack of polos feeding my horse. He's standing there, he wasn't mine at this point. We were just seeing if he wanted to be mine. Well, day one, he's eaten 2 packets of polos before he even got on. So he's like,
he's pretty much in the trailer.
I really want this job. And so my friend is a coach, and she had me on the lead rein, and she was saying to me, like, we're going to walk forward. We're going to go through the corner that you don't like because your previous horse didn't like it. And this horse doesn't mind. And we got halfway down, and I'm smiling. And we've ridden half of the school. And as we turned the corner, I said to her, what if I can't get off? And she said, don't panic, you're going to be fine. And I said, what if I can't? And she said, well, you know what we're going to do? we're going to walk around this corner, we're going to walk up there, we're going to stand and we're going to talk. And when you're ready, I'm going to help you get off. And I could feel the panic. And she said, okay, let's talk about where we are now. That's happening in a minute. Where are we now? And we went through very carefully this process. I mean, amazing job she did of, and she trusted, she'd ridden this horse as a competition horse. She knew him inside out. She was feeding him mints. He would not have cared if we'd taken an hour for me to get off. He was, he was the most kind, genuine, gorgeous horse ever. And we got there and she said, okay, let's talk about how you're going to get off. And I said, well, I'm going to take my feet out the stirrups and I'm going to lean forward and I'm going to put my hand either side and I'm going to swing my good leg, which luckily is the right leg, and I'm going to touch my left leg and then I'm going to slide down. And she said, and I'm going to tell you when your feet hit the mountain block.
Right.
And we did it. And you would have thought from what she said to me that we'd just won a medal. She made it so special. She was so invested. The horse had another packet of polos. We did it again the next day, but this time I didn't think I can't get off.
Right.
I thought I've gone round twice and I'm getting tired and my heart says go 3, but my brain says save some energy to get off.
Yes.
Which we did. And we went through this process and then, so like I've said, I had so many day ones. I know how to do this. It wasn't long before we had trot. It wasn't long before I didn't need anybody standing there. I had someone staying in the arena with me as a, a security blanket and also support and someone to talk to and someone to feed the horse mints. Very important. Yeah. And we progressed quite quickly. And I hadn't hacked for about 5-6 years, maybe even a decade, I want to say, because the horse that I had, 5 years is probably more realistic. The competition horse that I had was known to be dangerous to hack, and although I hadn't necessarily believed that, I did discover that life was too short to put him through that. He was quite an ulcery horse. He'd had physical issues. He'd had a complex history and he just was not happy with it.
No, there's no point stressing him.
And the bizarre thing was that he would go from the horse box to the arena following my mum and my dog. So he would do his hack along there. I will tell you one more story before I get back to Humpty, because I know I've been talking a long time. But we had qualified for regionals, and this seemed like it had been my goal, and I'd taken it very slowly and very carefully. And this horse and I, by now, we'd been together about 18 months. The day before the regionals, they're saying, oh, we might cancel, there's a hurricane coming in. And I said, oh, nonsense, it'll be fine. 6 o'clock in the morning of my regionals, my coach texts me and says, I know you're focused and you want to go in the arena, but I'm worried for your safety and I think you should divert to another regionals. And I said, nonsense, we'll be fine. So I'm riding the world's spookiest, most dangerous horse. And my mum is like, okay, well, as long as we stick to our routine and as long as we don't react, if he hates it, we'll go home, but we'll try. And I remember tacking him up and the saddlecloth blowing across, and it took 2 of us to hold it down and the saddle to put it into place. Yeah. And I can remember the noise, right, and me looking around the car park, him looking at the car park, the people who had been the night before looking around the car park thinking, we've been in this all night, at this point we might as well ride because we're here anyway. And he'd always had a thing about trees. If you've got a horse that's spooky about trees, you know trees move, right? You're screwed, aren't you? And I'd always said to him, it's a tree. It's a tree.
It's a tree. It's a tree. Calm down. Yeah.
It's fine. We go past the wheelie bin, which is doing its own little salsa. My mum's holding it in place, saying, just go past that while I hold it down. And a tree falls down. And he turns round and he looks me in the eye. And if I could have captioned it, it would have been, I told you trees were dangerous, and here we have it. And I thought, is he going to run? And I said to my mum, mints, 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 get the mints, get the mints. And she's going, mints? And he's like, tree, I was right, you were wrong, I'll follow the mints. And so we make our way through the tunnely bit of trees, and you go to Addington and they've got these arenas. And one of my friends from riding club said, Alison, the A marker is dangerous. Your mum is going to have to hold it down. I know what you're sitting on. Please be careful.
Oh my gosh.
And as I was actually using all of my, yes, it might be windy. Yes, there might be trees, but we know what we're doing. We're going to go through our pattern. We've practiced this. We will find counter canter. We will be fine. And I said to my mum, you've got to hold down the A marker. And she went, I beg your pardon. And I said, apparently we've got to hold it down. And it was doing this like some kind of physics experiment. It was levitating. So she's now holding it down, but she said to me, well, look at what are the other markers doing? And I said, well, apparently it's just A we have to worry about. So she was like, but when I remember riding past E and seeing her head towards K, and I was like, if E goes, he's not looking. He's looking at where you are. Stay where you are. Hold it, And the judges can't hear us because it's so noisy. And we got to the end of the test, and the judge came out. She said, I'm so glad you're alive. She said, I saw you were riding Neptune, and I thought, oh, no. Why did you come today? I know this horse. I know you. I'm so worried for you.
Goodness.
It was actually a really good test and whatever. But long and short of it was that I was terrified at this point of hacking because it's something that I loved and I really enjoyed, and was the most magical experience for me is to hack had become unsafe. So when it was time to take Humpty out, I said to Sarah, you've got to come with me. And she said, yes, come with me. And we did that thing of we've got up the drive, you still okay? Yeah, we got up to the hedge, you still okay? At this point, we're now furthest from home. Do you want to turn round? Or you? And we did that. I mean, suffice it to say, 2 weeks later, I hacked out on my own for the first time in years.
Amazing.
It was the most, because he was so calm and steady. If he saw something that worried him, he would look and would either make the decision to turn around and go home very quietly, or he might sort of bounce, but it never really went past the bouncing. He would be sort of bouncing, saying, I'm getting ready to do something, and I need you to sit quietly, and I need you to make a decision.
I need you to tell me everything's okay, Mum.
Yeah, and so we had lots of fun doing that. But I mean, I've so many moments. If you look on my feed, there's the day we met the squirrels and they played on the floor in front of us, and then they ran through his feet. And I'm thinking, I've gone from not being able to hack 2 meters to standing here with pheasants and squirrels and life. And it was just the most wonderful gift from that horse.
That's so lovely. That is so, so special. On our yard, we've got a we swear it's just a really, really clever pheasant, a white pheasant.
Oh, I've never seen a white one.
It only appears, apparently they're bred specifically for shoots, and there's a bit of a thing about shooting the white pheasant, upsettingly. But during shooting season, it comes and takes refuge on our yard. But then it goes. It's not shooting season now, and it's gone. And we haven't seen it for ages. And my kids laugh because they say you hate the white pheasant, and then you're worried about it and worried about where it's gone. But I think it's gone off to live its best life, and it'll be back next shooting season. But it basically lives to scare us all. So it will just like leap out of the undergrowth at us when we're riding around the track. And then I swear it is after me. But yeah, my girls really laugh about the fact that it's
your little friend.
Yeah. We're like frenemies. Me and the white pheasant. But it's just so funny how like a pheasant or a squirrel or whatever these massive animals, and it can just blow their top, can't it? And you can spy them.
It's their instinct, isn't it? Their survival, and I suppose domestication is you're never going to lose that.
No.
I think that for me, I like a horse. I really like the horse who says, I'm worried about that. I need more information. I'm processing it before I make a decision.
Yeah.
I think the horse that scared me the most would be Neptune, because he would go through all of that. I'm processing, and bang, he was gone. So you had nothing between, and the going wasn't possible every time. And he was quite different to every other horse I had, because what I learned to do with him was, while he was processing, not wait, distract.
Yes.
And divert where possible.
Yeah.
And that was not ultra reliable. So he was a very tricky horse to ride. But conversely, after I had a very bad fall from him, definitely added on to all of the other injuries that I've had. And I wanted to get back on. And the memories I had, I've ridden this horse in a hurricane. I've ridden this horse for several seasons. I've done something with this horse every day. We have a good relationship. He doesn't want to hurt me.
Yeah.
So what can I do? Why does he do this? And I remember something that I'd learned a long time before, which was, ask yourself, how is the horse doing it? And I realized how he was spooking was because we were losing that moment of connection.
Right.
And that actually, as much as it felt wrong to keep him focused and in his happy place, it was actually doing us both a favor to be in the happy place. So I'm not talking strapping down. I'm not talking fixed. I'm none of that.
No.
But I'm talking about, actually, if his happy place is wrapped around my leg on the left rein, on a teardrop, where he has nothing to think about apart from flowing through the pattern and then letting me in, at the point where he let me in, I'm now safe to go and do the things that he finds more challenging, whilst being aware that if there is something that triggers him, I've got less than 3 seconds to do something about it. And when you live with that, you don't realize how much tension you're holding. So by the time I got to Humpty, I needed to learn to let go of that tension, in the same way that a horse who's recovering needs to know that it doesn't hurt anymore.
Yes.
So we need sometimes to do some work about, what are we holding on to unintentionally? Maybe we're holding on to some nerves or some survival or some little bits of triggers. Like, I'm probably still always going to be triggered by a pigeon, even when my horse is saying, hello, pigeon friend.
Yeah.
Simply because of some of those experiences that are very hard. And you're sort of fulfilling it for the horse, because if I go pigeon, which is my natural reaction, the horse's natural reaction is, my human is saying pigeon, therefore. And so I guess that's where we can have out of the saddle conversations. We can think about our preparation. We can be intentional about it.
And I think it's really important recognizing it. Like, as soon as you've recognized something that is a problem but no longer a problem, then you can start to work through it. Because I noticed that when I was starting to hack Toby, at the moment I mounted, I felt tense. There is absolutely no need to feel tense hacking Toby. He is an absolute wonderful hacking pony. He loves it. It's his happy place. And I felt tense, and I thought, why do I feel tense? This is crazy. I would put like a toddler on this pony to hack. It's really not a problem. And I realised it was from my previous horse, which I haven't had for years and years. I had like a 15-year break between these horses. And it was from my previous horse, who at the time didn't scare me to hack at all. I hacked him all the time, but there was always an event. And now I would not want any of those events. Not for me, not for my children, not for anything. At the time, it didn't scare me. It wasn't a problem. That was just my riding life, was going out on these crazy hacks on Alfie. But then I kind of had translated this without realizing to Toby, and then I had to kind of work through going, no, this is Toby. He's amazing, and we're going to enjoy this, and it's not a problem now. But it just took that moment of recognition, thinking, why do I feel like this? This is madness. But yeah, it wasn't even his fault, bless him.
And I
Poor
think
Toby.
that's part of the progress, isn't it? Like you said, once you've got that recognition, once you're then open to the horse that you're with, you can start to rebuild, rewire.
Yeah.
I think if I could say one thing to a rider, and probably to myself, is that
Mm.
you don't have this sense that you have to be totally confident to start. What you need to do is to recognize that you're not always going to be peak confidence.
Yeah.
And what you can do is you can find little strategies, little routines, maybe make a habit for yourself, maybe do some of the things that you and your horse are going to enjoy,
Yeah.
and take those smaller steps.
Definitely. Definitely. That's absolutely brilliant advice. Alison, I just really want to quickly ask you about the Equestrian Heroes Club.
Okay.
Could you tell me a
Okay.
little bit about it, please?
Of course, I'd be delighted. Thank you for asking. So, Equestrian Heroes is my
Mm.
website, and I had this idea, this desire to make it an equestrian centre, but an online version. I
Mm.
thought, why can't we have? Because I was doing remote coaching, I was still coaching people from different places in the world,
Right.
with different solutions,
Right.
and I wanted my website to feel the same as the best places where I had ridden and the best places where I had coached. So bring the experience of feeling, you've got good friends, good support, good coaching, good peer network, safe, enjoyable space. But into quite a flat space, that's hard. We've got a
Yeah.
suite of web pages, and I thought, well, okay, we need a rider lounge. We need
Yeah.
space where we can have the kind of conversation you are having, so people can set up a live room and they can have a chat, or they can wait for me to set up one and have a speaker and have a topic and get people from all around the world joining in with that. Or it can be a bit more like, a sort of social media chat where people can comment on the photo. So that's the sort of lounge experience.
That's lovely.
When I started, um, I had years, because of a project I did, through my coaching CPD, of writing a daily message on Facebook. And Facebook changed how people were seeing. And I just saw it as a sharing of information, a talking point. Maybe I'd read something that interested me. Maybe I was learning something. Maybe something was coming up in my coaching. And it was a bit of a dialogue, and there was a real sense of community. And so I took all of that and thought, I'm going to put it in a library. I'm going to put it so that we have articles on different topics. And then I thought, as I got better at building the environment, I thought, wouldn't it be great if riders could make their own journal and their own notes on the article that they've read? Maybe they don't want to talk to other riders about it. Maybe they are, and they don't even want me to see. They just want this space. They're at the yard. They don't necessarily have a pen and paper. They want to make a quick note. So I changed the library into a sort of, you could pop in after your ride and you
Right.
could read some questions that I would ask a rider after riding and think about it. So the questions I would ask are for myself. Did I feel good about that ride? What did I like? Am I feeling a bit conflicted, like everything's tangled up? How can I process that? And so there's these different scenarios within the library space that people can come in before they ride. So now they've thought about what went on and they're getting ready to ride. What are they feeling now? What's going to be the thing that they want to bring into that session? What they're going to be intentional about? Maybe today is the day that they're going to start and use the leg yield a bit differently.
Mm.
They've got the basics, but they're going to try some different patterns. What
Yes.
are their, I would use the word performance cues, but other people, you might use the word wish. What's on your wish list for today?
Mm.
How are you going to, does your horse understand leg yield? Great. You understand leg yield. Do you understand how to talk to each other about it? Great. What does it feel like to you? So I would ask myself, what does it feel like to me when I'm doing that? And I was thinking, like, what am I thinking about? And it goes back to that sort of Polocrosse, catch the ball. So instead of thinking, right, I need to memorize this textbook, and this article and what my coach said and what I've seen and done and whatever, bring it into my space and what it feels like for my horse and myself.
Yeah.
And so that's the sort of, it's still called the library, because I think, well, you've still got the chance to read, you've still got the chance to find out about things, but you've also got time and space to, it doesn't have to be beautiful sentences, it can just be words that mean something to you, and you can add to that over time. So that's the riding club in a very quick.
That's really cool. That is a really great idea, and what a lovely resource for people to be able to access completely,
and it's
free of charge. That's amazing.
You can do it on your phone. So whether you've got an Apple phone, Android phone, you can download the app. As soon as you download the app, it will automatically, because you have to put your email address in.
Yep.
It will automatically make you a member. So straight away on the phone, you've got these spaces, for want of a better word. If you prefer to do it on your iPad, laptop, whatever, you can go into the web version, and the experience is the same, but there's perhaps a little bit, I was able to be richer in color and perhaps imagery. In the app, it's, you've essentially got the phone screen, condensed. So it has a different, I suppose, feel.
Yeah.
Then each one, I sort of hope that people have their own, in the same way that I see Addington, and I've got this internal map. I hope that people feel that they can have their internal map the same way. So I always say, think of some of the guides that I've got along the way. If you're walking through reception and you think, oh, this is about how to get ready for a dressage test, I'll pick that up. And it will only be sort of 7-8 pages.
Yeah.
But there could be some kernels in there that make you think, oh, I remember feeling that, or I remember thinking that, and then if they have something they want to ask me, they can come into the lounge and they can tag me, or they can send me a message or an email, and I can either give some very quick advice, or they can say, can we explore this further? And I'll say, yes, you might find this useful, or you might want to have a session, or is there someone in your area who does that? Because it sounds like that could be helpful. So it's the same as if someone walked into my yard and said, can I talk to you about, this is what I'd like to do, what should we do? So it's that's kind of vibe.
That's very cool. Thank you. That is amazing. And what I'll do is, when I do the show notes for this, I'll link it in the bottom of the show notes as well, so people can go and get access to that, and I would absolutely recommend it. It's incredible. So that's so lovely. Alison, thank you so much. I think everything you're doing is amazing, and it is really cool to hear a lot about the amazing horses and the amazing experiences that you've had. Honestly, what a busy, fulfilled equestrian life you have had. It's amazing. But thank you so, so much. And I really, really appreciate you giving me your time today. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks, Katy.
I will speak to you soon, Alison.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.